Maya Rodriguez had always been the quiet one in her geology class at Colorado State University. While her classmates debated theories loudly in the back rows, she sat in front, meticulously taking notes and asking questions that often made Professor Williams pause and think. Her professors knew her as thorough and brilliant, but her peers saw her as the girl who always carried too many books and spoke too softly to be taken seriously. The opportunity came during spring break of her junior year. The university's geology department had organized an expedition to the remote Sangre de Cristo Mountains, a challenging terrain known for its unpredictable weather and treacherous paths. 12 students were selected, along with 2 graduate assistants and Professor Williams himself. Maya had earned her spot through excellent grades and her demonstrated expertise in topographical mapping, though she suspected some of her classmates questioned why she was chosen over more popular students. The group consisted of typical college archetypes that Maya had learned to navigate carefully. There was Brad Thompson, the loud pre-med student who treated every conversation like a competition he had to win. Jessica Martinez, the sorority president who commanded attention wherever she went and expected others to follow her lead. Kevin Walsh, the former military student who believed his 2 years of service made him qualified to lead any outdoor expedition. Sarah Chen, the social media influencer who seemed more interested in getting the perfect wilderness selfie than learning about geological formations. Then there were the graduate assistants, Marcus Taylor, a third-year PhD student who desperately wanted to impress Professor Williams, and Amanda Foster, who had been on several previous expeditions and carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Professor Williams, despite his academic credentials, had limited experience with actual field work, having spent most of his career in laboratory settings. Maya had prepared for this trip with the intensity she brought to everything academic. She studied topographical maps of the region for weeks, memorizing elevation changes, water sources, and potential hazards. She researched weather patterns, identified alternative routes, and even contacted local park rangers to understand current trail conditions. While her classmates were posting about their upcoming adventure on social media, Maya was quietly building a comprehensive understanding of the terrain they would navigate. The morning of departure, Maya arrived at the meeting point with her carefully packed gear and a waterproof case containing detailed maps she had annotated with her research. She watched as her classmates arrived with expensive equipment that looked brand new, most of it clearly purchased specifically for this trip. Brad spent 10 minutes explaining his new GPS device to anyone who would listen, while Jessica complained about the weight of her designer hiking boots. Professor Williams gathered the group for a final briefing, explaining their route and objectives. They would spend 5 days in the mountains, collecting geological samples and documenting various formations. The plan seemed straightforward: follow established trails, make designated camps, and return safely with their research complete. Maya listened carefully, occasionally glancing at her maps and noting small discrepancies between the professor's description and what she had researched. As they loaded into the university vans, Maya found herself relegated to the back seat, her quiet demeanor making her invisible among the louder personalities. She didn't mind the isolation. It gave her time to review her notes one final time and prepare mentally for the challenges ahead. She had no idea that within 48 hours, those carefully prepared maps would become the difference between life and death for everyone on the expedition. The first day of hiking went smoothly enough. The weather was clear, the trails were well marked, and everyone seemed excited about the adventure ahead. Maya walked near the back of the group, occasionally stopping to examine interesting rock formations or to check their progress against her maps. She noticed small things that others missed: changes in vegetation that indicated elevation shifts, the sound of water that suggested they were near a stream not marked on the standard trail maps, and subtle changes in the terrain that hinted at weather patterns. When they made camp that first evening, Maya quietly approached Professor Williams with a concern. The weather forecast she had checked that morning suggested a storm system moving in faster than originally predicted. She showed him her notes and suggested they might want to consider an alternative route for the following day, one that would keep them at lower elevation and closer to established shelter points. Professor Williams listened politely, but seemed more interested in maintaining the original schedule than adapting to potential weather changes. Marcus, the graduate assistant, was standing nearby and quickly agreed with the professor's assessment that they should stick to the plan. Amanda, who had been setting up the camp kitchen, glanced over at Maya's maps but said nothing. Brad, who had been eavesdropping on the conversation, laughed loudly enough for the entire camp to hear. "Come on, Maya," he said, his voice carrying the condescending tone she had learned to expect. "You're being paranoid. We've got GPS, we've got the professor's experience, and we've got perfect weather. Stop worrying about everything and try to enjoy the trip." Jessica joined in, her voice sweet but unmistakably dismissive. "Maya, you're so prepared it's actually kind of cute. But maybe trust that the people in charge know what they're doing. This isn't your first expedition, right, Professor Williams?" Maya felt her face flush with embarrassment, but she stood her ground. "I just think we should be prepared for contingencies," she said quietly. "The weather in these mountains can change quickly, and I've identified several alternative routes that might be safer if conditions deteriorate." Kevin, who had been organizing his gear with military precision, looked up from his pack. "Look, I've been in actual dangerous situations, and this isn't one of them. You're overthinking this. Sometimes you just have to trust your team and move forward with confidence. The dismissal stung, but Maya was used to being overlooked. She had spent years in academic environments where her careful preparation was seen as excessive rather than valuable. She quietly returned to her tent, double-checking her maps and weather instruments one final time before settling in for the night. She lay in her sleeping bag, listening to the sounds of the camp settling down for the night. Through the thin walls of her tent, she could hear her classmates discussing their plans for the next day, their voices full of excitement and confidence. No one mentioned her concerns about the weather, and no one asked to look at her detailed maps. Maya had learned long ago that being right wasn't enough if nobody was willing to listen. She had been the student who spotted errors in textbooks that professors initially dismissed, only to later acknowledge her corrections. She had been the one who identified flaws in research methodologies that graduate students initially ignored, only to later incorporate her suggestions into their work. She had developed a thick skin about being overlooked, but it still hurt every time. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya made a silent promise to herself. She would continue to be prepared, continue to pay attention to details, and continue to speak up when she saw potential problems. Whether anyone listened or not, she would be ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. She had no way of knowing that within 24 hours, her preparation would be the only thing standing between her classmates and disaster. The second day dawned with an ominous gray sky that made Maya's stomach clench with anxiety. She had checked her portable weather radio before dawn and confirmed that the storm system was indeed moving faster than predicted. The temperature had dropped significantly overnight, and the wind had picked up enough to make the tent walls flap noisily. Maya emerged from her tent to find the camp in various states of morning preparation. Professor Williams was consulting his standard trail map with Marcus, while Amanda was efficiently breaking down the camp kitchen. The other students were moving slowly, clearly not morning people, and several were complaining about the temperature change. "Looks like Maya was right about the weather," Amanda said quietly as she passed Maya's tent. It was the first acknowledgement Maya had received that anyone had been paying attention to her concerns. Maya approached the group gathered around Professor Williams, her annotated maps in hand. "Professor, I really think we should consider the lower elevation route today. The storm system has accelerated, and we're going to be caught in exposed terrain if we stick to the original plan." This time, Professor Williams looked more carefully at Maya's maps, noting the detailed annotations and alternative routes she had marked. Marcus peered over his shoulder, and Maya could see him beginning to understand the thoroughness of her preparation. "These are incredibly detailed," Professor Williams admitted. "Where did you get all this information?" Maya explained her research process, the ranger contacts, and the weather pattern analysis she had conducted. As she spoke, she noticed that Amanda had stopped packing and was listening intently. Even some of the other students had gathered around, though Brad and Jessica still seemed skeptical. "I still think we're overthinking this," Brad said, though his voice carried less conviction than the night before. "We're not exactly amateur hikers here." Kevin checked his phone and frowned. "Actually, I'm not getting any signal up here. When's the last time anyone checked the weather?" Maya held up her weather radio. "I've been monitoring it every few hours. The storm is definitely intensifying, and it's moving faster than the original forecast predicted." Professor Williams looked at the gray sky, then back at Maya's maps. Maya could see him weighing the decision, caught between sticking to his planned curriculum and adapting to changing conditions. The academic in him wanted to maintain the schedule, but the responsible adult was beginning to understand the potential risks. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked Maya. Maya spread her map on a flat rock and pointed to the route she had identified. "This path takes us through more protected terrain. We'll still hit most of our geological objectives, but we'll be at lower elevation with better shelter options if the weather turns bad. It adds about 2 miles to our hike, but it keeps us near water sources and established emergency shelters." Amanda leaned over the map, tracing the route with her finger. "This is actually brilliant," she said. "I've been on expeditions where we got caught in exposed terrain during storms. It's not something you want to experience." Marcus was beginning to look nervous. "Maybe we should radio back to the university and get their input on this." "No signal," Kevin repeated, holding up his phone. "We're on our own up here." Jessica, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. "Okay, I'm not trying to be difficult, but how do we know Maya's route is actually safe? I mean, no offense, but you've never led an expedition before." Maya felt the familiar sting of being questioned, but she kept her voice steady. "I've hiking these mountains since I was 12. My family has a cabin about 20 miles from here, and I've been exploring this area for years. I know it's not the same as formal expedition leadership, but I do know this terrain." This revelation seemed to surprise everyone. Brad looked skeptical. "Wait, you've been hiking here for years and you never mentioned it." "It didn't seem relevant," Maya replied. "The point isn't how long I've been here. The point is that the weather is deteriorating, and we need to make a decision about our route." Professor Williams looked at the darkening sky, then back at Maya's detailed maps. The wind had picked up noticeably, and the temperature was continuing to drop. "All right," he said finally. "We'll try your route, but I want everyone to understand that this is a group decision, and we stick together no matter what happens." Maya felt a surge of relief mixed with anxiety. She had gotten them to listen, but now she was partially responsible for everyone's safety. As the group began breaking camp and preparing for the modified route, she double-checked her calculations and confirmed their position one final time. The modified route started smoothly enough. Maya took a position near the front of the group, occasionally consulting her maps and pointing out landmarks. The terrain was more challenging than the original trail, requiring careful navigation through rocky sections and dense vegetation, but it was also more protected from the wind. About 2 hours into the hike, the first drops of rain began to fall. Maya checked her weather radio and confirmed that the storm was now directly overhead. Within minutes, the light rain had turned into a steady downpour, and the temperature had dropped another 10 degrees. "This is exactly what I was worried about," Maya said to Amanda, who was hiking near her. "If we had stayed on the original route, we'd be completely exposed right now." Amanda nodded grimly. "I've been in situations like this before. Exposure kills people in the mountains." The rain continued to intensify, and soon visibility was reduced to just a few yards. Maya found herself naturally taking the lead, using her compass and map to navigate through terrain that was becoming increasingly difficult to identify. The established trail markers had disappeared, and the landscape looked completely different in the heavy rain. "Maya," Professor Williams called from behind her, "are you sure we're going the right way?" Maya stopped and consulted her map, using her compass to confirm their bearing. "Yes, we're on track. There should be a large rock formation ahead that will give us some shelter. We can regroup there and wait for the worst of the storm to pass." Brad, who had been struggling with the muddy terrain, called out, "How do you know there's shelter ahead? What if we're just walking deeper into the wilderness?" Maya turned back to face the group. Everyone was soaked, cold, and beginning to look scared. She could see doubt in their eyes, the same doubt she had faced countless times in academic settings. But this time, lives were potentially at stake. "Because I've been to that rock formation before," she said firmly. "It's called Devil's Shoulder, and it has a natural overhang that will protect us from the rain. We're about 15 minutes away if we keep moving." Jessica, who had been silent for most of the hike, suddenly spoke up. "What if you're wrong? What if we get there and there's no shelter? We're already soaked and it's getting colder." Maya looked at the scared faces around her. These were the same people who had dismissed her concerns the night before, who had laughed at her careful preparation, who had made her feel like her thoroughness was a character flaw rather than a valuable skill. "Then we'll find another solution," she said calmly. "But right now, moving forward is our best option. Standing here in the rain isn't going to improve our situation." Amanda stepped up beside Maya. "She's right. We need to keep moving and get to shelter. Maya's been right about everything so far." Professor Williams nodded reluctantly. Lead the way, Maya, but everyone stays together. No one falls behind. Maya turned back toward the trail, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. She had spent years being overlooked and dismissed, but now, when it truly mattered, she was the one they were counting on. She just hoped her preparation and knowledge would be enough to get them all safely through the storm. The next 15 minutes felt like hours. Maya led the group through increasingly difficult terrain, using her compass and landmarks to navigate through the rain and fog. The wind had picked up significantly, and several times she had to stop and help classmates who were struggling with the slippery rocks and muddy paths. Finally, through the rain and mist, the dark shape of Devil's Shoulder appeared ahead. Maya felt a surge of relief as she confirmed that the natural overhang was exactly where she remembered it, providing a dry space large enough for their entire group. There, she said, pointing ahead, shelter. The group moved quickly toward the rock formation, and within minutes they were all huddled under the overhang, finally protected from the driving rain. Maya watched as her classmates began to relax slightly, wringing out their wet clothing and organizing their gear. Maya, Professor Williams said quietly, I owe you an apology. Your preparation saved us from a very dangerous situation. Maya nodded, but she knew their ordeal was far from over. The storm was still raging, and they had at least 2 more days of hiking ahead of them. She pulled out her maps and began planning their next move, knowing that the group's survival might depend on her ability to continue making the right decisions. As they huddled under the rock overhang, Maya noticed that the dynamic of the group had begun to shift. The classmates who had dismissed her concerns were now looking at her with a mixture of respect and gratitude. She had proven herself when it mattered most, and everyone knew it. But Maya also knew that their challenges were far from over. The storm was still raging, and they were deep in wilderness territory with limited supplies and no communication with the outside world. The real test of her leadership was just beginning. Under the shelter of Devil's Shoulder, Maya spread out her maps and began calculating their options. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and she knew they couldn't stay in this exposed position indefinitely. They needed to find more substantial shelter and wait for the weather to improve. How long do you think this storm will last? Marcus asked, his voice betraying his anxiety. Maya checked her weather radio again, though the signal was weak. Based on the pattern, it should start clearing by tomorrow afternoon, but we can't count on that. We need to assume we'll be dealing with bad weather for at least another 24 hours. Professor Williams looked at the maps Maya had spread out. What are our options? Maya pointed to a location about 3 miles from their current position. There's an old ranger station here. It's been abandoned for years, but the structure should still be sound. It would give us real shelter and a chance to dry out our gear. 3 miles in this weather, Jessica said, her voice shaking slightly. Is that safe? Safer than staying here, Maya replied. This overhang will protect us from the rain, but not from the wind. If the temperature drops much more, we're going to be dealing with hypothermia. Kevin, who had been checking his gear, looked up. How do you know about this ranger station? Are you sure it's still there? Maya hesitated for a moment. My family and I discovered it about 3 years ago during a hiking trip. The roof was intact then, and the walls were solid. It's not luxurious, but it's better than camping in the open. Amanda was studying the route on Maya's map. It looks like we'd be traveling along a ridge line. That could be exposed to wind. The first part is exposed, Maya admitted. But then we drop into a valley that should provide some protection. The ranger station is at the bottom of the valley near a stream. Brad, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since the storm began, finally spoke up. I hate to admit it, but Maya's been right about everything so far. If she thinks we should go to this ranger station, I'm willing to follow her lead. The admission from Brad surprised everyone, including Maya. She had grown so accustomed to his dismissive attitude that hearing him acknowledge her expertise felt surreal. Professor Williams looked around the group. Are we all in agreement? Moving to this ranger station seems like our best option. Everyone nodded, though Maya could see the fear in their eyes. They were all cold, wet, and scared, but they were finally united in trusting her judgment. All right, Maya said, folding up her maps. We'll wait here for another hour to see if the storm lessens at all. If not, we'll make the move to the ranger station. Everyone needs to check their gear and make sure they have everything secured. As the group prepared for the next leg of their journey, Maya found herself in the unfamiliar position of being the person everyone looked to for guidance. It was a responsibility she had never sought, but one she was determined to handle well. The hour passed slowly, with the storm showing no signs of improvement. If anything, the wind had intensified, and Maya could see that everyone was getting colder despite the shelter. She made the decision to move. Time to go, she announced. Stay close together, and if anyone has trouble, speak up immediately. We're going to take this slowly and safely. The group emerged from the shelter of Devil's Shoulder into the full force of the storm. The wind was fierce, and the rain was coming down in sheets. Maya took the lead, using her compass to maintain their bearing as they began the treacherous journey toward the abandoned ranger station. The first part of the hike was as difficult as Maya had predicted. The ridge line was completely exposed to the wind, and several times she had to stop and help classmates who were struggling to maintain their footing on the slippery rocks. The visibility was so poor that she could barely see the person directly behind her. "Maya, are you sure we're going the right way?" Professor Williams shouted over the wind. Maya checked her compass again and confirmed their position against the landmarks she could barely make out through the storm. "Yes, we're on track. The descent into the valley should start in about 10 minutes." Those 10 minutes felt like an eternity. Maya found herself constantly looking back to make sure everyone was still together, helping people navigate particularly difficult sections, and trying to maintain morale in the face of increasingly harsh conditions. Finally, the terrain began to slope downward, and Maya felt a surge of relief as they started descending into the valley. The wind immediately became less fierce, and the rain, while still heavy, was no longer driving horizontally into their faces. "Better," Maya called back to the group. "Much better," Amanda replied. "You were right about the valley providing protection." As they continued down the slope, Maya began looking for the landmarks that would lead them to the ranger station. The storm made navigation challenging, but she had been correct about the protection the valley provided. The hiking became easier, and the group's morale began to improve. After another 30 minutes of careful navigation, Maya spotted the dark outline of a building through the rain and mist. "There," she said, pointing ahead, "the ranger station." The group moved quickly toward the structure, and Maya felt a surge of relief as she confirmed that the building was indeed still intact. The roof looked solid, and the walls appeared to be in good condition. Maya approached the door and found it unlocked. She pushed it open and stepped inside, followed quickly by the rest of the group. The interior was dark and dusty, but it was dry and protected from the wind. "This is perfect," Professor Williams said, his voice filled with relief. "Maya, I don't know how to thank you." Maya was already moving around the space, checking the condition of the windows and walls. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "We still need to make sure this place is safe and figure out how to stay warm." As the group began to settle into the ranger station, Maya realized that her ordeal was far from over. They had found shelter, but they were still stranded in a wilderness area with limited supplies and no way to communicate with the outside world. The storm was still raging, and they had at least another day of challenging weather ahead of them. But for the first time since the expedition began, Maya felt like she was truly in her element. The careful preparation, the detailed maps, the weather monitoring, everything she had done that others had dismissed as excessive was now proving to be essential for their survival. Inside the abandoned ranger station, Maya quickly took charge of organizing the group's efforts to make the space habitable. The building was larger than it had appeared from outside, with a main room that had clearly been used for meetings or briefings, a smaller office area, and what appeared to be a storage room. "First priority is getting everyone warm and dry," Maya announced. Everyone needs to change into dry clothes if you have them. We'll hang wet gear near the windows where it might have a chance to dry. Amanda immediately began helping coordinate the clothing changes, while Marcus and Kevin explored the storage room to see what supplies might be available. Professor Williams sat heavily in a corner, clearly exhausted by the ordeal. "Maya," Jessica said quietly, approaching her with an expression Maya had never seen before. "I need to apologize. I was completely wrong about you. You saved our lives today." Maya looked at Jessica, remembering all the times she had been dismissed or ignored by her classmates. "You don't need to apologize. You were scared, and that's understandable." "No," Jessica insisted. "I was arrogant. I thought being popular and confident was the same as being competent. You've shown me how wrong I was." Brad overheard the conversation and joined them. "Jessica's right. I've been a complete jerk to you, Maya. You tried to warn us and I mocked you for being prepared. I'm sorry." Maya felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to point out that their apologies came only after she had proven herself in a crisis. But another part of her recognized that people often need dramatic circumstances to see beyond their preconceptions. "What matters now is that we all work together to get through this," she said diplomatically. Marcus emerged from the storage room with exciting news. "There's a cache of emergency supplies back there. Looks like it's been maintained fairly recently. We've got some canned food, water purification tablets, and even a first aid kit." Maya felt a surge of relief. "That's great. It means we won't have to worry about food or water while we wait for the storm to pass." Kevin was examining the windows and doors. "The structure is solid. We should be safe here even if the storm gets worse." As the group settled in for what would clearly be a long night, Maya found herself naturally taking charge of logistics. She organized watches to monitor the weather, distributed the emergency food supplies, and helped everyone find comfortable sleeping arrangements in the limited space. "Maya," Professor Williams said as she was checking her maps one final time, "I want you to know that I've learned something important today. Academic knowledge and real-world experience are both valuable, but they're not the same thing. You have both, and that's rare." Maya nodded, appreciating the recognition. "I just want everyone to get home safely." "That's exactly why you're the right person to lead us through this," he replied. As the night wore on, Maya found herself unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. She was constantly listening to the storm, checking the weather radio, and planning their route for the next day. The responsibility of leading the group weighed heavily on her, but she was determined not to let them down. Around midnight, Amanda approached her. "You need to get some rest. You're no good to anyone if you're exhausted." "I know," Maya replied. "I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything." You've thought of everything, Amanda assured her. Trust me, I've been on a lot of expeditions, and I've never seen anyone as prepared as you are. Maya finally allowed herself to rest, though she remained partially alert throughout the night. She woke several times to check the weather and confirm that everyone was safe and warm. The next morning brought encouraging news. The storm had weakened significantly overnight, and Maya's weather radio indicated that clear skies were expected by afternoon. The group's morale improved dramatically with the promise of better weather. "So what's our plan for getting out of here?" Kevin asked as they shared a breakfast of emergency rations. Maya spread out her maps and showed them the route she had planned. "We can't go back the way we came. The trails will be too muddy and dangerous. But there's another route that follows the valley floor for most of the way. It's longer, but it's safer." Professor Williams studied the route. "How much longer?" "About 6 miles instead of 4, Maya replied. "But it keeps us at lower elevation and follows established trails for most of the way. We should be able to make it back to the vehicles by late afternoon." Brad looked at the map and nodded. "I trust your judgment completely. After yesterday, I'm not questioning any of your decisions." The group spent the morning preparing for the final leg of their journey. Maya helped everyone organize their gear and made sure everyone understood the route they would be taking. She also took time to explain some of the geological features they would encounter, trying to salvage some educational value from the expedition. By noon, the rain had stopped and patches of blue sky were visible through the clouds. Maya made the decision to begin their return journey. "Remember," she said as they prepared to leave the ranger station, "we're not out of the woods yet. The trails are going to be muddy and slippery, and we're all tired from yesterday. Take your time, watch your footing, and speak up if you need help." The final hike back to civilization was challenging but manageable. Maya led the group along the valley floor, navigating around fallen trees and washed-out sections of trail. The weather continued to improve throughout the day, and by late afternoon they emerged from the wilderness to find their vehicles exactly where they had left them. As they loaded their gear into the vans, Maya felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had successfully led a group of people through a dangerous situation, using skills and knowledge that had been dismissed and undervalued by her peers. "Maya," Professor Williams said as they prepared to drive back to the university, "I want you to know that I'm going to be recommending you for the department's leadership scholarship. What you did out there was extraordinary." Maya smiled, feeling validated in a way she had never experienced before. "Thank you. I just did what needed to be done." As they drove back toward campus, Maya reflected on the events of the past few days. She had always known that her careful preparation and attention to detail were valuable, but she had never expected to have such a dramatic opportunity to prove it. The expedition had changed her relationships with her classmates, but more importantly, it had changed her understanding of her own capabilities. She had always been the quiet, prepared student who worked behind the scenes. Now she knew she could lead when leadership was needed. Back at the university, word of the expedition's adventure spread quickly. Maya found herself in the unusual position of being recognized and praised for her actions. Students who had barely noticed her before sought her out to hear the story of how she had led the group to safety. "I heard you basically saved everyone's lives," one student said to her in the geology lab. Maya was uncomfortable with the hero narrative that was developing around her actions. "I just used the skills I had learned and the preparation I had done. Anyone could have done the same thing." But privately, Maya knew that wasn't entirely true. Not everyone would have spent weeks studying maps and weather patterns. Not everyone would have identified alternative routes and emergency shelter locations. Not everyone would have had the knowledge and confidence to lead a group through dangerous terrain. Professor Williams made good on his promise to recommend Maya for the leadership scholarship. He also asked her to co-author a paper about crisis leadership in academic field work, based on their experience in the mountains. "Your actions out there demonstrated a level of preparedness and leadership that we should be teaching to all our students," he told her. Maya accepted the opportunity enthusiastically. She had learned that her meticulous preparation and quiet competence were not character flaws to be hidden, but valuable skills to be shared and celebrated. The scholarship application process required Maya to write about her leadership philosophy and her career goals. As she worked on the essays, she found herself articulating ideas about leadership that she had never fully formed before. "True leadership," she wrote, "is not about being the loudest voice in the room or the most confident person in the group. It's about being prepared, staying calm under pressure, and making decisions based on knowledge and evidence rather than ego or popularity." The experience had taught her that leadership often comes from unexpected places, and that the person who seems least likely to lead may be the one best equipped to do so when circumstances require it. Maya's relationship with her classmates had fundamentally changed. Brad, who had been openly dismissive of her before the expedition, now sought her advice on everything from course selection to career planning. Jessica, who had always been the social leader of their group, now deferred to Maya's judgment on academic matters. "You know," Jessica said to her one day, "I always thought leadership was about getting people to like you and follow you. But you showed me that real leadership is about getting people to trust you and depend on you." Maya appreciated the sentiment, but she also recognized that her classmates' new respect for her was based on a single dramatic event. She wondered if that respect would last once the memory of the expedition faded. She didn't have to wonder long. Over the following weeks, Maya found that her classmates continued to seek her out for advice and guidance. Her reputation for thorough preparation and sound judgment had been established, and it extended far beyond the geology department. Other students began asking her to help them plan their own outdoor adventures. Professors started inviting her to participate in research projects. Graduate students sought her advice on field work preparation. Maya realized that the expedition had not just changed how others saw her, but how she saw herself. She had always been confident in her academic abilities, but she had never seen herself as a leader. Now she understood that leadership was not about personality or charisma, but about competence and reliability. The leadership scholarship came with a monetary award, but more importantly, it came with opportunities to develop her leadership skills further. Maya was invited to participate in advanced workshops on crisis management, team building, and decision-making under pressure. One of the workshop leaders, a former park ranger named David Martinez, was particularly impressed with Maya's story. "What you did out there," he told her, "is exactly the kind of leadership we need in outdoor recreation and emergency management. Have you ever considered a career in park service or search and rescue?" Maya hadn't considered those career paths before, but the suggestion intrigued her. She had always planned to pursue graduate work in geology, but the expedition had shown her that she enjoyed the practical application of her knowledge as much as the theoretical study. She began researching careers that would combine her geological expertise with her newly discovered leadership abilities. The possibilities were exciting: park ranger, emergency management coordinator, expedition guide, environmental consultant. As her junior year came to an end, Maya found herself thinking about the expedition that had changed everything. She had entered the mountains as a quiet, overlooked student who was known for her careful preparation, but not her leadership abilities. She had emerged as someone who could take charge in a crisis and guide others through difficult situations. The transformation hadn't been immediate or easy. Even after the expedition, Maya had to work to overcome her natural tendency toward quiet observation rather than active leadership. But the experience had given her confidence in her abilities and a new understanding of what leadership could look like. She began to see leadership opportunities in everyday situations. In group projects, she took on coordinating roles. In class discussions, she spoke up more frequently. In student organizations, she volunteered for responsibilities that required planning and organization. Maya's professors noticed the change. "You seem more confident this semester," Professor Williams observed during one of their research meetings. "The expedition really brought out something in you." Maya nodded. "I think I always had these capabilities, but I needed the right circumstances to discover them." "That's often how leadership develops," he replied. "People don't become leaders in comfortable, easy situations. They become leaders when they're forced to step up and take responsibility." As Maya prepared for her senior year, she felt a sense of excitement about the future that she had never experienced before. She had discovered abilities she didn't know she possessed, and she was eager to continue developing them. The expedition had taught her that being prepared and paying attention to details were not just academic virtues, but practical skills that could make the difference between success and failure, safety and danger, life and death. She had learned that leadership was not about being popular or charismatic, but about being reliable and competent. She had discovered that the quiet, careful preparation that had once made her seem overly cautious was actually a form of leadership in itself. Most importantly, Maya had learned that she could trust her own judgment and abilities. The girl who had once been dismissed as overly prepared and insufficiently confident had become a young woman who could lead others through dangerous situations with skill and composure. As she looked toward her senior year and beyond, Maya knew that she would continue to be the person who studied the maps, monitored the weather, and planned for contingencies. But now, she understood that these weren't just personal quirks or academic habits. They were leadership skills that could serve her and others throughout her life. The summer between her junior and senior years brought an unexpected opportunity. David Martinez, the former park ranger who had been impressed with Maya's leadership during the expedition, contacted her about a summer internship with the National Park Service. The position would involve leading educational tour and assisting with search and rescue operations in one of Colorado's national parks. "I think you'd be perfect for this," David told her during their phone conversation. "You have the technical knowledge, the leadership experience, and the kind of calm competence that we need in our guides." Maya accepted the internship eagerly. It would be her first opportunity to apply her leadership skills in a professional setting, and she was excited to see if the abilities she had discovered during the expedition would translate to other challenging situations. The internship began with an intensive training program that covered everything from wilderness first aid to group psychology. Maya found herself among a diverse group of interns, most of whom had more outdoor experience than she did. Once again, she was the quiet, careful one who took detailed notes and asked thoughtful questions. "You remind me of myself when I was starting out," said Elena Rodriguez, the senior park ranger who was conducting their training. "I was always the one with the backup plans and the extra supplies. Some people saw it as excessive, but it saved my life more than once. Maya felt a sense of kinship with Alina. Here was someone who had built a successful career on the same careful preparation and attention to detail that had once made Maya feel like an outsider. The training program included simulation exercises designed to test the intern's ability to handle crisis situations. Maya found herself naturally taking charge during these exercises, using the same calm, methodical approach that had served her well during the expedition. "You have a real gift for this," Alina told her after one particularly challenging simulation. "You stay calm under pressure, you think clearly about options, and you communicate effectively with your team. Those are rare qualities." Maya felt a surge of confidence. The validation from an experienced professional meant more to her than all the praise she had received from her classmates after the expedition. When the training program ended, Maya was assigned to lead educational tour for visiting school groups. The work required her to combine her geological knowledge with her leadership skills, managing groups of sometimes unruly teenagers while teaching them about the natural world. Her first tour group was particularly challenging. A 38th graders from an inner-city school who seemed more interested in their phones than in rock formations. Maya watched as some of the other interns struggled to maintain control and keep the students engaged. Drawing on her experience from the expedition, Maya took a different approach. Instead of trying to command attention through volume or authority, she focused on making the information relevant and interesting. She told stories about the geological forces that had shaped the landscape, connecting abstract concepts to tangible experiences. "This rock formation you're looking at," she explained to the group, "was created by the same forces that cause earthquakes. The pressure that built up over millions of years was like a giant spring being compressed. When it finally released, it pushed these rocks up thousands of feet." The students began to pay attention, drawn in by Maya's ability to make the science accessible and exciting. She encouraged questions and used their curiosity to guide the discussion, rather than simply delivering prepared information. By the end of the tour, the previously disinterested students were actively participating and asking thoughtful questions. Their teacher approached Maya afterward, clearly impressed. "I've been on a lot of these educational tours," the teacher said, "and I've never seen kids that engaged with the material. You have a real talent for this." Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had successfully applied her leadership skills in a completely different context, proving to herself that her abilities were transferable and valuable. As the summer progressed, Maya's reputation as an effective guide spread throughout the park service. She was assigned to lead increasingly challenging tours, including groups of college students and adult education classes. Each new group presented different challenges, but Maya found that her core approach remained consistent: careful preparation, clear communication, and genuine respect for the people she was leading. The search and rescue component of her internship provided an entirely different kind of challenge. Maya was part of a team that responded to emergency calls from hikers who had become lost or injured in the wilderness. The work required all of her technical skills: map reading, weather monitoring, terrain assessment, combined with the leadership abilities she had developed. Her first search and rescue call came on a foggy morning in late July. Two hikers had become separated from their group during a dawn hike and were now lost somewhere in a remote section of the park. Maya was assigned to a team led by Elena, along with two other experienced rangers. "This is where your attention to detail really matters," Elena explained as they prepared for the search. "We need to think like the missing hikers, understand their decision-making process, and anticipate where they might have gone." Maya studied the topographical maps, identifying the most likely routes the hikers might have taken. She noted water sources, shelter locations, and potential hazards. Her careful analysis helped the team narrow their search area significantly. "Good work," Elena said, reviewing Maya's assessment. "Your map reading skills are excellent. You've identified the most probable locations based on the terrain and the hikers' reported experience level." The search took most of the day, with Maya's team systematically checking the areas she had identified as most likely. Late in the afternoon, they found the missing hikers, cold and scared but uninjured, exactly where Maya had predicted they would be. "How did you know they'd be here?" one of the other rangers asked Maya as they helped the hikers prepare for the journey back to safety. Maya explained her reasoning, pointing out the geographical features that had made this location the most logical place for inexperienced hikers to seek shelter. The other rangers were impressed with her analytical approach and her ability to think through complex scenarios. "You're a natural at this," Elena told her during the hike back to the ranger station. "Search and rescue requires exactly the kind of systematic thinking and careful preparation that you bring to everything you do." As Maya's internship continued, she found herself taking on increasingly complex responsibilities. She was asked to train newer interns, to lead specialized tours for VIP groups, and to assist with emergency response planning. Each new challenge built on the skills she had developed, confirming her growing confidence in her leadership abilities. The internship also provided Maya with valuable perspective on her academic studies. She began to see how her geological knowledge could be applied in practical, meaningful ways. The theoretical concepts she had studied in textbooks became tools for understanding and explaining the real world. You're bridging the gap between academic knowledge and practical application, Alina observed during one of their regular mentoring sessions. That's a valuable skill that will serve you well in whatever career you choose. Maya had been thinking a lot about her career choices. The internship had opened her eyes to possibilities she had never considered before. She was beginning to see that her future might lie not just in academic research, but in applied science and public service. As the summer drew to a close, Maya reflected on how much she had grown since the expedition that had first revealed her leadership abilities. She had gone from being the quiet, overlooked student to someone who could confidently lead groups through challenging situations. The internship had taught her that leadership was not just about crisis management, but about everyday interactions with people. Whether she was guiding a group of students through a geological formation or helping coordinate a search and rescue operation, the same principles applied: preparation, clear communication, and genuine care for the people she was leading. Alina offered Maya a permanent position with the Park Service after graduation, but Maya decided to complete her senior year first. She wanted to finish her degree and explore other opportunities before making a long-term commitment. "The offer will still be here when you graduate," Alina assured her. "People with your combination of technical knowledge and leadership skills are rare. We'd be lucky to have you." Maya returned to campus for her senior year with a new sense of purpose and direction. She had discovered not just her leadership abilities, but her passion for applying her knowledge in service of others. The quiet, careful student who had once felt overlooked now knew exactly what she had to offer the world. Her classmates immediately noticed the change in her confidence and presence. Maya had always been competent, but now she carried herself with the assurance of someone who had proven her abilities in real-world situations. "You seem different," Jessica observed during their first geology class of the semester. "More confident, more sure of yourself." Maya smiled. "I think I've finally figured out what I'm good at and how to use it." The expedition that had changed everything felt like a lifetime ago, but Maya knew it had been the catalyst for everything that followed. She had been forced to step up and lead when no one else could, and in doing so, she had discovered abilities she never knew she possessed. As she prepared for her final year of college, Maya looked forward to new challenges and opportunities. She had learned that leadership was not about being the loudest or most charismatic person in the room, but about being prepared, staying calm under pressure, and making decisions based on knowledge and evidence. The girl who had once been dismissed as overly prepared had become a young woman who understood that preparation was not a weakness, but a strength. She had learned to trust her own judgment and abilities, and she was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. Maya's senior year brought new opportunities to apply her leadership skills in academic settings. She was elected to lead the geology department's student organization, a position that required her to coordinate events, manage budgets, and represent student interests to faculty and administration. The role was different from the crisis leadership she had experienced during the expedition and her internship, but Maya found that the same principles applied. She approached each responsibility with careful preparation, clear communication, and genuine concern for her fellow students. Under her leadership, the geology student organization flourished. Maya organized field trips to interesting geological sites, brought in guest speakers from various earth science careers, and created study groups that helped struggling students improve their academic performance. Maya has transformed our organization, Professor Williams observed during a faculty meeting. She's brought a level of organization and purpose that we've never seen before. Maya's success in the student organization led to other leadership opportunities. She was invited to serve on university committees, to mentor younger students, and to represent the geology department at regional conferences. Each new responsibility reinforced Maya's understanding of her own capabilities. She was no longer the quiet student who doubted her ability to lead. She had become someone who could confidently take charge of complex situations and guide others toward successful outcomes. The most significant challenge of her senior year came during spring break, when she was asked to lead a group of younger students on a geological survey expedition. The trip was similar to the one that had changed her life 2 years earlier, but this time Maya was officially designated as the student leader. The group included 8 sophomore and junior students, along with a graduate student supervisor. Maya was responsible for route planning, safety protocols, and educational objectives. It was her first opportunity to lead an expedition from the beginning, rather than stepping in during a crisis. Maya approached the planning with the same meticulous attention to detail that had served her well in the past. She studied maps, researched weather patterns, identified emergency shelter locations, and prepared detailed contingency plans for various scenarios. "You're incredibly thorough," commented Jake Patterson, the graduate student supervisor. "Most student leaders just follow the basic itinerary without thinking about alternatives." Maya had learned that thorough preparation was not just about being cautious, but about being responsible to the people who depended on her leadership. She would not allow herself to be caught unprepared again. The expedition went smoothly, with Maya's careful planning ensuring that the group stayed safe while accomplishing their educational objectives. But the real test came on the final day, when one of the students suffered a mild ankle injury that made hiking difficult. Maya quickly assessed the situation and implemented one of her contingency plans. She reorganized the group to provide support for the injured student, identified an alternative route that would be easier to navigate, and coordinated with the graduate supervisor to ensure that everyone reached safety without incident. "That was impressive," Jake told her afterward. "You handled that situation with the kind of calm competence I usually only see in experienced professionals." Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had successfully led a group through a challenging situation, drawing on all the skills and knowledge she had developed over the past 2 years. The quiet, overlooked student was now a confident, capable leader. As graduation approached, Maya faced important decisions about her future. She had multiple options: the permanent position with the Park Service, graduate school opportunities, and offers from environmental consulting firms. Each path offered different challenges and rewards. Maya ultimately decided to pursue a master's degree in environmental science, with a focus on natural resource management. The program would allow her to combine her geological knowledge with her leadership skills, preparing her for a career that would involve both scientific research and public service. "I think that's the perfect choice for you," Elena told her during a phone conversation. "You have the technical skills for the research and the leadership abilities for the management side. You'll be able to make a real difference in environmental protection and conservation." Maya felt confident in her decision. She had learned to trust her own judgment and to pursue opportunities that aligned with her values and abilities. The expedition that had changed everything had taught her that leadership was not about seeking power or recognition, but about using her skills to serve others and make a positive impact. As she prepared for graduation, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She had started college as a quiet, careful student who was often overlooked by her peers. She was ending as a confident leader who had proven her abilities in challenging situations. The transformation had not been easy or immediate. Maya had to overcome her natural tendency toward quiet observation and learn to speak up and take charge when necessary. She had to develop confidence in her own judgment and abilities, learning to trust that her careful preparation and analytical thinking were valuable leadership tools. But the most important lesson Maya had learned was that leadership comes in many forms. She did not need to be loud or charismatic to be effective. Her quiet competence, careful preparation, and genuine concern for others were leadership qualities that were just as valuable as more traditional leadership traits. At graduation, Maya was recognized with several awards for her academic achievement and leadership contributions. As she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she thought about the expedition that had changed everything and the classmates who had initially dismissed her concerns. Many of those same classmates were now among her closest friends and strongest supporters. They had learned, as Maya had, that true leadership is not about popularity or charisma, but about competence, reliability, and the willingness to take responsibility for others. Maya's story had become something of a legend in the geology department. Incoming students heard about the quiet girl who had led her classmates to safety during a dangerous storm, and many sought her out for advice and mentorship. "Your story has inspired a lot of students," Professor Williams told her during their final meeting. "You've shown them that leadership can come from unexpected places, and that careful preparation is not a weakness but a strength." Maya felt grateful for the recognition, but she also understood that her story was not unique. There were probably many other quiet, careful students who had the potential to be leaders if given the right opportunities and circumstances. As she prepared to leave for graduate school, Maya made a commitment to continue developing her leadership skills and to help others discover their own leadership potential. She had learned that leadership was not a fixed trait but a skill that could be developed through practice, reflection, and continuous learning. The expedition that had changed everything was now just one chapter in Maya's ongoing story. She had discovered her leadership abilities during that crisis in the mountains, but she had spent the following years developing and refining those abilities through practice and experience. Maya understood that her journey as a leader was just beginning. Graduate school would bring new challenges and opportunities to grow. Her future career would require her to continue learning and adapting, applying her leadership skills in new contexts and situations. But she faced these challenges with confidence, knowing that she had already proven her ability to lead others through difficult situations. The quiet, careful student who had once felt overlooked now knew that she had valuable skills to offer the world. Maya's story was ultimately about more than leadership development. It was about the importance of preparation, the value of careful observation, and the power of quiet competence. She had learned that being different from her peers was not a weakness but a strength, and that her meticulous approach to everything she did was a valuable asset rather than a character flaw. As Maya looked toward her future, she carried with her the lessons learned during that transformative expedition. She had discovered that leadership was not about being the loudest voice in the room, but about being the most prepared. She had learned that true strength came not from dominating others, but from serving them. The girl who had once been ignored for holding the map had become a young woman who could confidently lead others through unknown territory. And she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would be ready to face them with the same careful preparation and quiet competence that had served her so well in the past.